All right, how's it going? We got another video here. White House flagging posts for Facebook to censor over COVID misinformation. Long story short, seems now the government is telling Facebook what should and shouldn't be allowed to be spoken in public. If you want to follow me and support me, you can do so and subscribe. Start here. The links will be in the description. We'll actually go to a we'll listen to this little clip here, which is kind of the starting point for all this.
With these social media platforms, and those engagements typically happen through members of our senior staff, but also members of our COVID-19 team. Given, as Dr. Murthy conveyed, this is a big issue of misinformation, specifically on the pandemic. In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation. We're working with doctors and medical professionals to connect to connected medical experts who are popular with their audiences with accurate information and boost trusted content. So we're helping get trusted content out there. We also created the COVID Community Corps to get factual information into the hands of local messengers. And we're also investing, as you all have seen, in the president's, the vice president's, and Dr. Fauci's time in meeting with.
So no longer anymore when you're saying something like Facebook or Twitter is censoring you and they go, but my private platform, well, you can go, no, they're just being used as a vehicle for the government to censor people saying stuff that they don't like or agree with. Like they're calling stuff they don't agree with misinformation or like disinformation. So we will get into it here. White House Press Secretary Jim Psaki said Thursday the Biden administration is identifying problematic posts for Facebook to censor because they contain misinformation about COVID-19. We'll get into it more and more and more here, but it's like it's like they told you not to mask, then they tell you to mask, and then it's saying this is a completely natural virus that just naturally evolved. If you said it came from like a lab leak or something like that, then you were labeled a conspiracy theorist. And like now they're like, oh well, yeah, that probably maybe did happen. Psaki disclosed the government's role in policing social media during her daily press briefing after Surgeon General Vivek Murthy called on companies to purge more pandemic posts. And this kind of goes back to a year ago. I think I was complaining about it as well, as like with the mask stuff and like going to grocery stores and like big box stores. They were saying, oh, if you don't like it, don't shop there. And it was like hiding behind the private platform thing. But those companies were doing it because like cities or states or whatever was like forcing those companies to follow those like rules and guidelines, or they're like threatened to shut them down. So it's like it's government coercion via private companies to citizens. So they're trying to like sidestep the government being tyrannical by saying, oh, it's a private company. If you want to shop there, you have to like follow their rules. So this what they kind of get into it with the article here from the Free Thought Project. It kind of like rehashes a lot, which I want to bring up in this other one here. But like they're talking about that it essentially is a where we go here. That essentially it is like the government and like big tech is coming together to make it like kind of like a fascistic state, authoritarian state. Here we go. Now we have the merger of corporate and state entities creating de facto fascism, and they are not only silent but behind it. And this is going to the it's talking about the White House here. Let me get back into this one here. The demand for censorship and Psaki's admission government involvement follows a series of flip-flops from health officials who contradicted themselves throughout the pandemic on issues such as mask efficacy, as well as censorship on claims that later gained credibility, such as the theory that leaked from a Chinese lab. And here's the thing, too. I've been seeing some videos, like, there was, like, the one medicine they were saying kind of treats people and have been, like, approved by the FDA, although not for that, like, the last 60 years. And doctors like promoting it and saying, yeah, this seems to be positively affecting patients. And then they kind of like, they were like trying to like, they completely like, because it was like doctors had like uploaded all this stuff and like their studies like on YouTube, and YouTube completely took the stuff down. I've been seeing like a doctor lately talk about ivermectin to help with the breathing issues of patients, and apparently like that's being like not allowed to be used as like an actual treatment. There's like actual like doctors on the ground using different I think like Z-Pack was the thing, and like just vitamin D, and like promoting like healthiness instead of like giving out like donuts if you want to get like the jab. We'll get into it too, because essentially people that don't want to get the vaccine don't want to be like a beta tester for an experimental like vaccine that you legally can't sue the companies for if you have like adverse health effects or if you die, which people have been dying from the vaccine. We are in regular touch with social media platforms, and those engagements typically happen through members of our senior staff and also members of our COVID team. Given, as Dr. Murthy conveyed, this is a big issue of misinformation, specifically on the pandemic. And like all the information needs to be laid out, and people need to make their own personal choices. It's like big daddy government is like trying to dictate what you can and can't see. It's like a overreaching like helicopter parent, and it's like weakening people because they're not letting them like develop their own like critical thinking skills and look into stuff and like research stuff themselves and with their own personal doctor. She added, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We are flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation. Psaki added, it's important to take faster action against harmful posts, and Facebook needs to move more quickly to remove harmful, violative posts. It's funny because they're deeming it like it's misinformation, it's disinformation, it's harmful, it could kill everybody. Psaki and Murthy, who also spoke at the press briefing, specifically said they are concerned about misinformation about vaccines. About 68% of U.S. adults have had at least one vaccine shot. That seems awfully high. Dramatically lowering infection rates in most parts of the country. Murthy said, we're asking social media companies to consistently take action against misinformation super spreaders on their platforms. Super spreaders. Misinformation takes away our freedom to make informed decisions about our health. No, it doesn't. The more information you have, you need to sort through it and figure it out. You need to figure it out on your own and with your doctor. About our health and the health of our loved ones during the health misinformation has led people to resist wearing masks in high-risk settings because they were forcing everybody to wear it when it was stupid to wear it. And you have people like in their cars by themselves wearing a mask. Then you have people admitting now that, like, even the ones that did get vaccinated, they don't want to take their mask off because, like, I don't want to be seen as maybe being a Republican. Oh, God. It's led them to turn down proven treatments and to choose not to get vaccinated. This has led to avoidable illness and deaths. Well, certain people that's taken the vaccine has also had certain avoidable illness and deaths as well. So, I mean, Psaki and Murthy would not answer a shouted question about the fact that Dr. Anthony Fauci, President Biden's chief medical advisor and the government's top infectious disease expert, has himself vacillated on COVID-19 information. It gets into here. Fauci did not promote mask wearing in February, March, and early April 2020 as the respiratory virus spread in the U.S. Despite the historical use of masks to counter airborne viruses and their successful early adoption in East Asia, but Fauci later pushed even wearing 2 masks at a time. So he was saying not wearing a mask, then they came out later saying wearing a mask. And I believe in the interview he did with 2020, he's like, yeah, we know masks work. We were just like wanting all the we're wanting to make sure there's enough masks for all like the healthcare workers, and not the normal everyday working people and the plebs and stuff. But he also was saying about the because you haven't heard anything else recently about herd immunity. Because he's saying they had to reach like a certain percentage. I think it was maybe, he said originally like 60 or 75 or something like that. He said originally something, and it was getting close to that. Then it came out later. He rose the number again. He was saying, I was just saying a lower number to begin with to get people to kind of go towards it. Then when they, so he was essentially admitting that he was lying. He was misinforming people to try to get them to act the way that he was wanting them to. But him doing it, oh well, he's the top guy. So other U.S. health officials initially discouraged wearing masks. Surgeon General Jerome Adams asserted in a now deleted tweet that masks were not effective at protecting people from COVID-19 before later saying they were effective. Facebook this year stopped censoring posts that claim COVID-19 may have emerged from the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China due to evolving information that bolstered the theory. Biden in May ordered a 90-day spy agency review on the lab leak theory. At least one spy agency was leaning toward the explanation, according to a statement released by the U.S. intelligence community. Social media networks have censored other posts before backtracking, notably including Facebook and Twitter, censoring the post reporting in October on documents from a laptop formerly belonging to Hunter Biden that appeared to link his father to business pursuits in China and Ukraine. Because that was like, that doesn't have to do with the illness per se, but it's like they came out with this story and it was proven that it was like actual information. It wasn't hacked. It wasn't leaked or anything like that. And the New York Post like came out with it, and this is like a couple of weeks before the election, and it got put out on Twitter. And then Twitter like literally like took it down, saying no, this is definitely hacked information. Like they're like, no, this has gotten through the correct legal channels about like all this like horrible stuff that was like on Hunter Biden's laptop that he dropped off to get repaired, and then he just left it there and forgot about it. And the owner tried contacting him several times, and after a certain amount of time, it gets forfeited to the person, the owner. But stuff that they don't like it gets labeled that there's hack material, or it's misinformation, or it's disinformation. So they're playing a game of, I don't even know if you'd call it semantics at this point. It's just like it's just propaganda pretty much. And here's the thing too, the more they're like pushing like in like Ohio and I think another state, they were offering like $1 million or like $1 million a week lottery if you got the vaccine, and they're giving out free donuts, and they're like trying to give out all this stuff, and they're getting celebrities like to like push us. Like the harder they push, like somebody could have been on the fence thinking either way, like maybe, maybe not, we'll see. But it would seem to me like the harder that they're pushing this like propaganda out, I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't want to be, because it's like it's a new drug that got fast tracked. It's experimental. You're essentially a beta tester for it. They wrote it in law that you legally can't sue them, which if a company you work for forces you, mandates you to take the vaccine to stay employed there, and you do have adverse health effects because of it, you can sue your employer, which that was something that came up, and like businesses were like freaking out after that because they didn't want to be held liable. Because I believe there's like a hospital system in Texas. They were like, I think it might have been 60% or is 40%. I can't remember. There's like a huge chunk of the nurses and staff there that they're refusing to get the vaccine. If they don't get it by, I think it's like September, maybe, then they're going to get fired. But when you like bring up kind of, if people are brought up like my body, my choice, right? Like I get to choose. The government doesn't get to determine like what medical procedures an individual takes. That's between the individual and their like healthcare provider. Like the way they're pushing this just seems like horrible altogether. Like this can make like tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, like the amount of propaganda they're pushing. It's like next level stuff. Former President Donald Trump filed lawsuits last week against Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, arguing they are legally squelching free speech rights, which I think this whole thing admitting that like the government is in fact working with at least Facebook here, like censoring stuff, can be used as a bit of evidence saying that yes, this is an actual concrete like First Amendment violation, because it is the government via a private platform censoring people's speech. On behalf of the government, Trump was banned from the platforms after the January 6th peaceful protests happened. These companies have been co-opted, coerced, and weaponized by government actors to become the enforcers of illegal, unconstitutional censorship, Trump said. Trump lawyer John Cole said the suits would prove that the tech companies are government actors, and therefore the First Amendment does apply to their actions, which I think is true. We have kind of a follow-up here that I want to get into really quick. Senator Mike Lee blasts White House for working with Facebook to flag certain posts. Government can't censor speech. And this is the big thing. Like her saying that is like kind of the key component. What I keep going into is the key component that like, even though it is Facebook, it's like they're getting like directions from the government. So it is like they're using that as like an intermediary for the government censoring people for stuff they don't like. Senator Mike Lee on Friday criticized the Biden administration for coordinating with Facebook to flag certain posts for censorship, telling Fox News in an interview that the government's actions looks like a First Amendment violation. The government can't censor speech. The First Amendment makes that very clear. They're a private for-profit corporation that can make its own decisions, but when it's doing it with collusion in the government, it looks to me a lot like a First Amendment violation, Lee said on America's Newsroom. During a Thursday news conference, White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki revealed the Biden administration Surgeon General offices flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation. She said senior executive branch staff has interacted with Facebook and other social media platforms to point out disinformation on their platforms. Social media companies have severely restricted the spread of information that contradicts mainstream narratives from government agencies and public health experts, often suspending accounts or taking down posts that violate their terms of service on COVID-19 information. Conservatives like Lee protested against that censorship, complaining that big tech companies have presented themselves as neutral platforms and yet take it upon themselves to crank down on certain forms of speech. What we've seen is social media platforms and search engines on many occasions promising to be even-handed, portraying themselves to their users and to the public as even-handed when they're anything but that. The American people aren't going to tolerate that much longer. So, a little side note here. But if you're wanting to search for information and you don't want to, or you don't trust Google's results, you can use look up something called DuckDuckGo if you don't know what it is. And it's also a search engine, but it doesn't have kind of like the algorithmic censorship that Google does. So you can use DuckDuckGo instead of Google. And if you're tired of Facebook, you can use minds.com instead of Facebook. Then you can use gab.com instead of Twitter. And I think Parler is trying to get its way back up. I don't know if they're fully up yet. You can also use things like BitChute instead of YouTube. Like at least go to these like alternative tech platforms and like kind of sign up and make something and kind of look at it. So if you are on, say you are already on like for some reason, if you get like kicked off like YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or something, you have like kind of secondary backup platforms you can get on too. Then also when you're on those platforms like Minds and Gab and stuff, you'll see all kinds of like news stories and articles and information you may not even see on, you know, like Facebook and Twitter, just because they either get like they don't get promoted or allowed, or they get censored, or they get shadow banned or something on those platforms. But without that shadow banning, they're able to naturally flourish to the top on the other sites like Minds and Gab and Parler and stuff. But that's a little side note. Also, using the Brave browser as well works. That's what I use. A big problem is sometimes the narrative endorsed by government public health experts and enforced by social media companies isn't always correct. This was demonstrated by the fact that Facebook recently reversed its policy or removing posts claiming that COVID-19 was made or manufactured. The change came after scientists began reevaluating the hypothesis that SARS-CoV-2 originated at the Wuhan Institute of Virology and was somehow leaked from the lab throughout most of 2020. However, the lab leak hypothesis was dismissed as a conspiracy theory, and public health scientists, including those in the government, worked behind the scenes to discredit that theory. Big tech companies have drawn criticism for suppressing the New York Post reporting on Hunter Biden's laptop and numerous other posts. What do these things have in common? Lee asked rhetorically. They're all messages that are deemed to be associated in one way or another with the right and not the left. You do not find instances of this happening with messages from the left. So I think that there may be a few from the left, but it seems to be that the censoring and the shadow banning and stuff is very heavy on the right, the Republican, the conservative. Because like all these like big tech companies are like in California, like they're in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and all that stuff. So they're like in kind of like these like leftist like bubbles and echo chambers. So they're like talking back and forth like, yeah, no one would vote for Trump. Like the whole 2016 thing or 2015, like yeah, no one would vote for him. But Google's there, I believe Twitter's there, Facebook is there. Then like all those, a lot of them social media headquarters are there. When they promise their own users that they're going to be even-handed and then do the opposite of that, that is a deceptive business practice. Also, a huge thing with YouTube as well is like they have like kind of vague. I know specifically YouTube because it happens like they'll like strike people or they'll like, kick them out of. They'll like demonetize them, so it gets brought up more that they're like rules and regulations. I guess like on Twitter and Facebook too, they can be very vague or they can be applied unevenly so that they don't have like very specific terms like this does this and this does that. It's kind of like non-meaning word or phrase or something that can be applied to however they want to apply it. Senate Republicans led by Lee have introduced the Promise Act, legislation that would require tech companies to increase transparency on their content moderation policies and would penalize companies that make a deceptive policy statement. With respect to those policies, violators of the proposed law would be treated as if they violated Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commissions Act by committing a deceptive business practice that would be subject to all penalties thereof. I know in Florida there was a DeSantis was putting up, or maybe the legislator was putting up a law that had to do with like kind of tech censorship. But I think it was getting held up in the courts as well. But this one's went on a little bit. I may have rambled a little bit too because I had a long day at work. I'm dead tired. So I just wanted to get this out here. So tell me what you think about this. I mean, I've rambled. You know what I think about it. Just because people say this, I'm like, you're being like a beta tester for an experimental drug that's been out like not even a year now, right? Maybe 18 months, depending on when they technically started it. But like I said before, if you want to like and support, you can do so on Subscribestar. At some point in time, I may get the because I was thinking about it too. I was talking about getting the like the Minds Pro and like kind of the website for this stuff set up, and I think with that, I wouldn't necessarily have to have a Subscribestar where you can donate directly to there. I think even with cryptocurrencies or however it works with that. But anyway, like, follow, subscribe, putting this on YouTube, back up on BitChute, then also sharing it on Facebook, Minds, Gab, Parler, and on the Subscribestar. I am tired. I barely got through this. All right, later.